Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 64 of the Hammer Territory podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you deep into the night on a Wednesday evening into Thursday. In fact, it's now Thursday morning, and I'm joined by Scott Coleman. Scott, the vibes are much different this time around than the last time we talked on this podcast.
Hey, Brad. Yes, the vibes are really good right now. And maybe it's like Beetlejuice, where you're a little scared to say it too many times, just knowing how this season has gone. But three fantastic wins so far against the Giants. And the fact that they have just kind of bounced back immediately after that disastrous loss on Sunday is really great to see.
For sure. And if anybody missed that podcast or any of our podcasts, we definitely encourage you to listen, download, subscribe to the show via your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, Overcast, etc. We're also on YouTube. It is audio only, but please support the show on that platform. We are part of Foul Territory and the entire network of shows over there. And the last time that you and I talked was Sunday. We should also plug our last show on the feed from Sean Coleman and Stephen Tolbert on Monday evening, chronicling the first of these three wins that we'll be discussing the last two of on this podcast. But you noted it. The Braves have now won 3 games in a row. They have a chance to sweep on Thursday afternoon. They now have a 2-game lead again over the Mets in the wild card race after briefly falling out of the third wild card spot about a week ago. And as we'll get into later on in this podcast, they actually had a comfortable win. The last time you and I talked, it felt like it might be a comfortable win, and then it wasn't. This time around, it was their first genuinely comfortable win in 3 weeks. It's been a while. They haven't won. They've won some games, but they've all been kind of nail biters, including the first two of this series. And then there was Wednesday, which was not at all really nail biting at all. I guess it was probably more nail biting than it should have been because we all have a collective PTSD. But it was certainly not a competitive game on Wednesday night.
Well, in games like Wednesdays, where you win 13-2, it was 5-0 within 30 pitches of the game in the first inning.
Yeah.
Games like that are so beneficial to a team when everybody can kind of take the night off. Basically, the entire bullpen got a breather, which, man, I mean, the bullpen has been used so much over the last 10 days or so. So you can really rest everybody. They also won a Grant Holmes start for, I believe, the first time since he's stepped in. And really, that's not Grant's fault by any means.
No.
He's been quite good. I mean, the fact that he is not only stabilized, I mean, we've talked on this show all season about how bad the back end of the rotation has been. So the fact that he and that Spencer Schwellenbach have really stabilized the back end of the rotation, especially lately, has been good. And the fact that they were able to get a very, very convincing 13-2 win really does just kind of help everybody on the team.
Very much so. And as you might expect, if you listen to this podcast regularly, but if you don't, we'll get into Tuesday's game first. And then we'll talk about Wednesday's game in a moment because it was the more fun one. But Tuesday's game was actually pretty interesting as well. So we'll start there beyond the big picture. And it was a 4-3 win for the Braves in 10 innings. It was their second straight 10-inning victory, which is a little bit strange. It kind of had a very similar blueprint. But I have to lead with my guy Charlie Morton because Scott, you retired him last week on the show. And I think he heard you. He came back and pitched well on Wednesday. Or Tuesday.
This podcast has been motivating players for many years, and whatever we have to do to get the very best out of our boys, we'll do it. But no, I mean, Charlie, we will happily do it. Charlie pitched really well, and he is having such a Jekyll and Hyde season where it feels like he's either been really strong or he's just gotten blown up.
Yep.
And 6 innings for a team, especially after the high stress and high drama on Monday night. 8 strikeouts was great. I think it cannot be overstated that 2,000 career strikeouts for Charlie Morton is such an impressive accomplishment, especially for a guy who really did not have a great first 5 or 6 years of his career. It really wasn't until Charlie hit age 30 that he turned it on. He was very much kind of a back-end innings eater for a lot of his career with Pittsburgh. And then he goes to Houston, turns it all around, goes to Tampa, then, of course, with the Braves. So congratulations to Charlie Morton, who not only pitched really well on Tuesday, but 2,000 career strikeouts is quite a mark.
You don't often see a guy have his best seasons in his basically mid-30s, which is what happened with Charlie, and then at the end of his 30s, he was still good, of course. And this is even I will acknowledge he's not been great this year, but at the same time, he's still a major league caliber starter at age 40, and it was a cool night to have him win the game as well. Well, I guess he didn't get the win. We don't really care about that, but they won the game, and that was a fun one. By the way, only 7 guys are active that have that 2,000 strikeout mark. 2 of them are on the Braves because Chris Sale has it as well. So that's a nice little wrinkle. The 2 old guys makes me proud as an old guy, a fellow old guy.
Yeah, I'm not quite in like the full on old guy mold yet, but I'm getting there. Like I wake up, my back is tight, my feet hurt, I get headaches. I don't know, Brad. We're falling apart here, but we'll try to power through for the pod. Um, but again, a well pitched game for both sides on Tuesday. Of course, Monday night's game. I know probably not everybody stayed up to watch with it being such a late one, but Blake Snell against Chris Sale was so good. And then Tuesday night maybe wasn't quite that. And there was some offense early, but then once Morton and Harrison settled in, it was really a good game. And even if the Braves did allow a tying run to score on a wild pitch in the 8th inning, everybody kind of rolled their eyes and was like, okay, here we go again. Good vibes on Monday. Let's, of course, find a painful way to lose this one. But thankfully, they were able to string it together and find a way to win another 50-50 game.
Yeah, they were. And again, listen to the show from Monday night if you want to break down that really fantastic game. Tuesday, as we sort of talked about, there's actually a nice play by Eli White, who we'll talk about later on, got optioned today. But our guy, Raisel Iglesias, slams the door in the 10th inning for the second straight night. And it's worth just saying out loud. People know this, but it's not exactly the same to save, quote unquote, a game in the 9th versus the 10th. In the 10th, you are facing the disadvantage of having a runner on second base. So it's not like you can't just assume even a good closer is going to be able to close every time in the 10th inning. But Raisel does it 2 days in a row, and he is not allowed an earned run, Scott, in quite literally 2 months. And he's pitching a lot. So that's pretty impressive on the surface. A couple of unearned runs in there, to be fair. But man, he has been fantastic. We kind of acknowledge that all the time now. But it's just really nice to have that warm blanket in the 9th inning, 10th inning, whatever you need him. Of course, guys blow saves, but he's been awesome for a long time.
Yeah, and our podcast partner, Steven, pulled a really great stat the other day. And really, we just wanted to give Raisel his flowers. And I think fans obviously realized how good this guy is. But these numbers even took me by surprise a little bit. So since the Braves acquired Raisel at the 2022 trade deadline, he ranks second in all of baseball among all relievers, which is 110 qualified relievers. He ranks second in ERA with a 1.82 ERA, basically over the last 2 calendar years. And he is sixth in FIP at 2.61. That's really, really good. And the consistency is impressive. He's not a guy who has to throw, 99 like so many closers do in order to be successful. He has that wicked split finger pitch. He does a good job of keeping the ball down in the zone and on the ground. So really, I think this is not a, wow, let's talk about Raisel Iglesias. We didn't know he was good, but we really did want to just hammer home the point of how good Raisel Iglesias has been since that trade. And on Monday and Tuesday, he was so locked in and very much put the team on his back late in the game.
Similarly to Iglesias, not quite on the same dominant level, more of a shout out from us, is Travis d'Arnaud. So d'Arnaud drives in the game-winning run 2 nights in a row, very similar to what Iglesias did. And Travis, we all love Travis. We've all talked about this a lot. It's been a bit on our podcast for a long time with you and I about how the Braves have had these catching duos for a long time, and he's been half of one for several years now. Travis d'Arnaud has been a top 15 catcher in baseball this year by Fangraphs WAR, despite playing like 40% of the time. That's not a small thing. He has been fantastic, and just another kind of a quiet shout out to Travis d'Arnaud, because you can't just assume that. And maybe he's a little bit over his head in some ways, like he's slugging almost 500, but at the same time, just another warm blanket. I don't want to overuse that phrase too much, but the Braves have 2 really good catchers. Sean Murphy's underrated in his own way, but d'Arnaud, man, just having that guy on your team in some ways would be an afterthought on a lot of teams. He's not in the Braves. They love him, and this is why.
Yeah, kind of under the radar. It's been a really good season for Travis. And not only on the field, but you talk to anybody, I mean, literally anybody in the organization, and they will sing his praises for the work that Travis does before the games. He's a great human being by all accounts. All of his teammates love him. And the Braves have such a fortuitous catching situation with d'Arnaud being the backup, even if he plays, 40% of the time, 45% of the time. And, Sean Murphy has really come along too in recent weeks. He had a home run on Wednesday night as well. And as he has distanced himself from the oblique injury, Sean Murphy's playing much better too. And the Braves for years have had really good catching. I mean, I think even going back to like 2000, so just this whole century, the Braves are like number one or number two in catcher war. Basically, every year the Braves have found a way to have good catching, and Travis d'Arnaud has certainly been a big component of that for the last 4 or 5 years now that he's been with the team.
After those shout outs, we should transition to the game on Wednesday. 13-2 is a very comfortable score, as we kind of would all know. It was the season high in runs scored for the Braves. Atlanta had not scored double digits in a long, long time. They've done it twice in 5 days. But
Yeah.
it was a fun start to the game, and it never really looked back. So we could talk about that, and then we'll get to Michael Harris returning because that's kind of the headliner already. I'll just peek behind the curtain. Michael Harris was going to be a lead topic on this podcast no matter what. And then it was like, oh, by the way, here's a grand slam for you. Put it on a tee.
So good. I mean, clearly Michael cares about our podcast content schedule because that was really great to see. I mean, he crushed that ball off of Robbie Ray. And it felt on Wednesday to me like a game from 2023 where the Braves jumped out to a big time early lead. They go up 5-0. They chased Robbie Ray in the first inning. I think that's the first time all season the Braves have gotten a starting pitcher out, not even in just the first inning, but even like in the second or the third. Those have been very few and far between. And I mean, just all night long, the offense was good, the pitching was good. And to get Michael Harris back offensively and defensively, it is going to make such a big impact on this team. And if he can really hit the way we have seen Michael Harris hit, even though he just didn't get off to a great start this season offensively, if he can give the Braves some real pop in the middle of the order, it is only going to help things by lengthening that lineup.
Right. He checks so many boxes, and Braves fans know that already. But the offense, it's not a total bonus. You kind of need him to hit. That's worth noting. But the defense alone, I mean, that's always been the appeal of Michael Harris in a lot of ways, is that he doesn't have to be a great hitter. Just a good one is just fine because he's so good in center field. The outfield defense has been really, really rough for the last couple of weeks in particular. His presence there helps everybody cover ground and all that stuff. He's awesome there. And yeah, a very strong welcome back moment for Michael. Also, it was according to the Braves broadcast on TV today, it was the first ever opposing team grand slam splashdown, as in like hit the ball into the water in that park in San Francisco. And that's been like 25 years. Like
Wow.
that's,
Yeah.
I'm sure Bonds did it, but they said it was the first time an opposing player has ever done that. So
Hmm.
that's says a lot. Obviously, it was Robbie Ray. Shout out to him. He was really bad in this game. But yeah, Michael Harris, welcome back, my guy. We all like Money Mike, and that was a welcome sign for everybody involved.
It was. And I mean, not only Michael Harris on Wednesday, but Matt Olson had an opposite field homer,
You're
which
right,
was good.
Scott. You're right, Scott. He's coming back. He's coming.
That's right. He's heating up. Austin Riley, who just continues to be so good, homered. Sean Murphy homered as well to kind of put the cherry on top late. So really, I mean, just a great game offensively. The Braves also drew a ton of walks, which is a sight for sore eyes. We
Yeah.
know we know the on-base challenges this team has had for most of the season, especially since Acuna went down with the injury. But overall, man, through 3 games so far, and we'll see if they can close off the series on Thursday and get the 4-game sweep, which would be amazing. But at very least, you have had 3 very enjoyable wins against a red-hot San Francisco Giants team. I mean, the Braves have poured cold water on, I think, what was probably the hottest team in baseball coming into this. And obviously, Monday and Tuesday were much more of the 50-50 variety. But I mean, they smoked them on Wednesday. And I mean, we said it off the top, but games like this are just so beneficial to give everybody a breather over the course of 162 games.
And they have not had many of those. We talked about the
No.
offense. The pitching was great. I mean, Grant Holmes, who you mentioned before, but He literally allows a home run on the first batter of the game. And I cannot believe, I don't know about you, I cannot believe that ball went over the fence. Both where it was and how it
Yeah.
was hit and the StatCast data, all that combination, that had no business leaving the yard. But shouts to Grant Holmes, it didn't rattle him at all. He settled right in and threw, here's the craziest number of the day, maybe 7 innings for Grant Holmes. My guy, 7 innings,
Yeah.
converted reliever. Like that's and by the way, on a night where you mentioned it, but they really needed to save the bullpen, and he did a great job with that. Obviously, it's easier when you're up by like 8 runs, but 7 innings from Grant Holmes was not on my bingo card tonight.
Yeah, it was great to see. And, 7 innings, 2 runs. You mentioned it was the first pitch that he threw. And it was like, how on earth did he get out? I went back and looked at the game day feed just to see where the baseball was. And I mean, it wasn't
Not
even
a strike.
close.
It
Yeah.
was not a strike. Yeah,
Ball one. And it ended up bouncing off the top of the fence and going over. And then Grant seemed like he ran out of gas a little bit in the seventh inning, gave up his second run, but still managed to strike out the last batter of the inning in order to close things down. Only one walk. I can guarantee you that with an early lead like the Braves had, if Grant Holmes would have gone out there and walked the yard, I mean, I could just see Brian Snitker putzing in the dugout, slowly dying
yeah,
inside.
that's right.
So yeah, I mean, really, Grant Holmes, one of the unsung heroes of this team. He has given them a chance pretty much every time he has gone out there to make a start. And we'll see what the future holds for him, whether it's a shift back to the bullpen. Maybe they use him in a hybrid role. Maybe they'll use him to give someone like Chris Sale a breather down the stretch. I really don't know, but he deserves a big time tip of the cap tonight as he picked up the first win of his big league career.
That's right. And just to not go crazy about this, but his peripherals look really good too. Like it's not smoke and mirrors. Some guys that are taking this journey that he's had, and he's an older guy for a rookie and all those things, you would think that maybe there's a chance he's kind of overperforming. That's not really the case. Like his numbers look good and under the hood as well. So shouts to him. He was fantastic in this game. The only somewhat negative from the day is that Jorge Soler left the game early. The Braves said it was precautionary due to left hamstring tightness. Snit, apparently, as we're recording this, according to our guy Justin Toscano of the AJC, said that Soler's not going to play on Thursday. That's probably precautionary too, according to what Justin was saying. I've not seen this video yet, but it seems like Snit was not too downtrodden about this, and it's an afternoon game. You don't want to push it at all. As long as that's okay, it's not a big concern. And again, they were up big, so they didn't have to push him at all. Soler's defense is what it is, but he has been so good at getting on base and all those things. Just cross your fingers, but it seems like indications are, as we're recording this in the early morning hours of Thursday, that all is going to be okay there. Just something to note.
Yeah, the fact that the Braves came out immediately and said it was precautionary. You mentioned it was 7-1, and anybody who has ever been to San Francisco in the summertime knows that it gets really chilly, especially out by the water. I think it was like 60 degrees tonight, so zero reason to risk a serious hamstring injury for Soler, especially on the night where you finally get Michael Harris back after missing 2 months. So won't play Thursday. Maybe they give him Friday just to make sure it's calming down, but at least so far, and we'll see if there's any update on Thursday when everybody gets to the ballpark. But at least so far, the Braves are saying all the right things, and it does seem to be a pretty minor tightness.
Yeah, just something to circle and flag about the game today. But everything else, I guess, until the ninth inning, just from a aesthetic standpoint, it was one of the worst position player pitching situations that I've ever seen for Yastrzemski from the Giants. There was actually a fun conversation happening on Twitter, I think, as you were writing your batterypower.com recap, Scott, about like why the Braves were even swinging at all. Because optimal strategy would dictate that the Braves probably shouldn't have swung at all the entire ninth inning because he couldn't throw a strike.
Yeah.
And they probably still be playing as we're recording this. It's like 1 a.m. now. They probably would still be batting, I have to say, if they were
Yeah.
still going.
Somebody in the dugout probably said, "Boys, we have a dinner reservation in
I
an
mean, it
hour."
really did seem like somebody
Yeah.
called it in, like, guys, you got to swing. Because, in particular, one that stuck with me, I don't know if you saw it, was the way that Sean Murphy handled his at bat. Murphy was swinging like Kelly Leak in Bad News Bears. That's a very old reference, but like he was like,
Yeah.
like stepping over the plate. Like he was just like, oh, let's get out of here, guys. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
But it was quite a farce, is the way that I would say that at the end of the game. It was it could have been even uglier, I suppose. But he was throwing like in the 40s. It's like hard to throw in the 40s if you're a major leaguer trying to throw pitches over the plate. It was hard to watch, and I'm sure anyone that didn't have to like cover the game with the podcast probably went to bed or should have gone to bed at midnight or so. I don't know. It was wild.
Yeah. Yeah. It was probably the worst position player pitching I have ever seen.
It was bad.
Um, yeah. I mean, there was even, you mentioned the Sean Murphy. I mean, he grounded out and it could have been a double play. And as it was all unfolding in my head, I was thinking, dear God, don't sprint down the line and pull something
Please.
here, Murph. Yeah. And he didn't. I mean,
Well,
he
and
just kind of trotted.
and Nikowski on the broadcast, the previous play where the guy like double pumped to second, like it should have been double play or should have gone to second, and they didn't throw to
Yep.
second. Like everybody was just tapped out. Basically,
Yep.
by the end of the game, it was like, all right, let's just get out of here. Let's be safe. I believe that the Braves threw 6 pitches in the bottom of the ninth as
Yep.
well. So
Yeah, took
it
the
was
words out of my mouth. Yeah, even the
breezy.
Giants were. Yeah, like I said, man, it gets chilly. It was like upper 50s with the breeze off the bay. I mean, it gets downright cold in that ballpark. Everybody was ready to go home, and thankfully, I mean, it's much better when the Braves are on the 13-2 winning side of it than some of the blowouts they've had to deal with recently.
All right, let's get to the sort of newsy notes portion of the podcast before we sign off here late into the evening. We mentioned Harris coming back. There was a discussion happening about the roster moves that had to happen to get him back. Ultimately, they had two choices to make. They had a option choice and also maybe a 40-man spot choice, and they ended up going with the option of Eli White to Gwinnett, and then they DFA'd Parker Dunshee to make 40-man room. And Snicker gave what I thought was a very hilarious and also accurate quote. He said, and I quote, "We wanted to keep inventory," which basically means that this is the way that they could make this happen without having to rock the boat at all. And by rock the boat, I mean probably it was a choice between this and DFAing Adam Duvall or Ramon Laureano. And this was the way they could do this in the quietest fashion, basically.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of maybe confusion when the Braves sent Eli White down, who has done a really nice job in limited samples. Had that fantastic catch on Tuesday night that, I mean, frankly, probably saved the game. Uh, but as we have talked on this show for a while, and if folks have followed the Braves, sometimes having minor league options is the worst thing a player can have. I think that's why, even though Adam Duvall has really struggled this season, if you DFA him, you more than likely would lose him for the rest of the season. We know that depth is important, even if it's not great depth in Adam's case. You at least want to keep him around as at least an option. He's hit left-handed pitching pretty well this season, and he is better than some of the other options the Braves would have in Gwinnett if they needed to call up an outfielder suddenly. But at the end of the day, Eli White is very likely to be recalled at some point here soon. On September 1st, rosters will expand as well, so he could be back in 2.5 weeks. I guess it sucks for Eli that, I mean, it was not his own fault that he
No.
was sent down to the minor leagues. It really is just kind of the roster game that you have to play.
Right, and he's not as good as Dylan Lee, but it's similar in that way. And I do think they it got a little bit silly with like the overstatement of how good Eli White is in some circles. Like he can't really hit. That's been proven. He does have utility though. He's a better defender than Duvall and Laureano. He's a better pinch runner than those guys. I do think that this is not the same decision, which is worth noting. If they had to choose a playoff roster today, I wonder if he would be on it, and I think he would be if I had to say that.
Yeah.
But they don't have to do that.
Right, right. Let's hope that those decisions have to get made in a month and a half. Yeah, he's a versatile guy. Eli White, he can play all over pretty fast.
He would never hit. I have to say, he would never hit in
Yeah.
the playoffs unless you absolutely got a really weird situation. But if he's your 26th man, I think that's fine. So
Sure, and you need depth. I mean, that is obvious at this point in the season with all of the injuries. You need to hold on to players as best as you can, and
we wanted
ensure,
to keep inventory. What a quote!
yeah,
I love Snit
that's
sometimes. It's like
yeah,
it's actually extremely candid of Snit to be like, you know what? It's literally we just don't want to lose anybody, and that's
yep,
it. Um,
yep.
I'm not saying everybody has to agree, but that does make logical sense. If that it's one of those. I understand if people wanted to see Adam go away. I think he also has some organizational appeal. They like Adam Duvall as a guy, and he's been around. He's been through the wars with them, etc. So we'll leave it there for now. Just a natural thing, and I agree with you. We will see Eli White again, if I had to guess, at some point. Um, Unfortunately, the other one of the other big news things is not a good one, and that is AJ Minter. So it was teased. We kind of knew this for the last couple of days, but the first intel started to come back, and AJ is going to need hip surgery of some kind. Now, the Braves went through painstaking detail to not rule him out for the season today. But I'm sure you noticed this like I did. Everyone was kind of tiptoeing around this. I think it's very likely he's done for the season. They just didn't want to say that. And they kind of were saying, at least the party line right now, is that we'll see once the surgery happens what actually has to get repaired or fixed or whatever, what the fallout is. But I mean, I don't know about you, Scott. A hip surgery in mid-August does not seem like an injury that people come back from.
No, it feels like AJ is done for the season. And I mean, maybe his Braves career. He is a free agent to be. And I mean, if this is the end for AJ Minter with the Atlanta Braves, and it might be, and they might also be able to bring him back because of the kind of lost season that he's experienced due to injury. But AJ Minter has had a hell of a career with the Atlanta Braves, one of the best left-handed relievers in the game since he was called up. I mean, he has had some huge moments and gotten some huge outs for this team over the years. But I do agree. I mean, even if he has the surgery on, tomorrow, which is August 15th, the likelihood that he would be able to return is slim to none. I do think AJ deserves some credit as well. Mark Bowman of MLB.com wrote the other day that AJ probably needed the surgery back in May when he first hit the injured list. And he tried to just rehab and pitch through it. And credit for him for gutting through it, because it sounds like he was in some pretty serious pain because of this. But clearly, AJ has just not been comfortable this season. The velocity has been down a little bit, and he just hasn't been his usual A1 self, which, as we have seen over the years, is a very, very good reliever.
Yeah, he's 30 years old, and it's brutal in a number of ways. Obviously for the team, but also you mentioned AJ's free agency. Like this would have been the time that you would get maybe your last kind of big deal if you're AJ Minter. Maybe you go somewhere else to be a closer and get that kind of closer money. That's a separate discussion that we'll have another time, of course. But he can come back. But you're right to point this out. Like this could be it for him. I pulled this one number to kind of encapsulate how good he has been since he arrived on the scene with the Braves. I think he's very, very much underrated because he hasn't been a closer very long. He was a closer a couple times for the Braves, but not for long stretches. But since he debuted, like the day he debuted in 2017, which is 7 years ago, since that day, he is in the top 10 of all Major League Baseball relievers in Fangraphs WAR. One more time, he's been a top 10 reliever in all of baseball since he debuted in that stat, alongside guys like Josh Hader and Edwin Diaz. And by the way, his teammate Raisel Iglesias are all in that top 10 as well. You can't fake that. That's 7 years of being an elite, or at least a very close to elite reliever on the same team, winning a World Series, all those things. So obviously, if it becomes a postmortem, we'll do that again. But shouts to AJ, because that's a heck of a run, and hopefully, look, maybe they get in there and they figure it out, and he's able to pitch in 5 weeks. I don't think that's likely at all, but they didn't rule him out, so we're not gonna rule him out either. But just want to give some context there.
Yeah. So wish the best for AJ, whether it's this season or next. Who knows? Maybe he would take kind of a bounce back 1 year deal to come back and try to rebuild this value, because again, we know how good this guy can be when he's healthy, but it just feels like all season long he just hasn't been right. And clearly, now that he needs the surgery, we have some confirmation that he has not been his normal self.
Yep, for sure. Elsewhere on the injury front, Ronaldo Lopez made a rehab start on Tuesday. By all accounts, looked pretty good through 4 innings. Velocity seemed to be in line with normal. He can come back from the IL as early as this weekend. Your guy and mine, Justin Toscano, former guest of this podcast, did kind of speculate, and I don't think he was reporting. I think he was speculating that you could see him maybe Tuesday against Philadelphia. The Braves have an off day on Monday. It would surprise, I think, everyone if he came back and flew all the way to Los Angeles to pitch this weekend. That would surprise me. But maybe it's the Philly series, and that's obviously not a great time to have to bring a guy back against Philly in a massive, massive series. But he's a veteran; he would be ready to go if you'd imagine. But big picture, like he's getting close, which is obviously helpful.
Yeah, and the fact that Ronaldo's velocity was solid was a really good sign. It sounds like the fastball was pretty effective, although the breaking stuff was not very crisp on Tuesday. But clearly, for a guy like him, he was just getting his work in and just making sure everything checked out. And by all accounts, his elbow is feeling good, which was a massive, I mean, just massive sigh of relief when he had the elbow scare a couple of weeks ago. If you pitch him in that Philly series, sure, it is not an easy game to come back after missing probably pretty close to a month at that point. But he would be coming off of basically 6 or 7 days of rest, so presumably he will be fresh. It's going to be good to have Lopez back for many reasons. One, we know what kind of performance he gave the team earlier in the year, but two, it does give you a little more of proven flexibility with your rotation. You're not quite so thin having to rely on Grant Holmes or having to dip into Gwinnett for whenever you need a starter to give everybody else a breather.
Right. It just occurred to me as we were talking, perhaps Tuesday, number one, the bullpen would be 100% fresh because they have Monday off. Also, you could just have Grant Holmes backing him up because he would have been right in line to start on Tuesday, basically, with the way that the rotation's gone. So maybe that's what they do. Maybe they have Ronaldo ready to go Tuesday, shortish leash, not going to pitch 100 pitches, that kind of thing. Have Holmes ready to go if you need him, and go from there. But that's obviously just a speculation guess, but it kind of makes sense if you line him up for that because that's home spot. At least it has been home spot the last few turns.
Yeah, and having Grant Holmes, I mean, the way that he has shown that he can, I mean, tonight through 7 innings.
7 innings today. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, what a great story. I mean, seriously, this dude stuck it out in the minor leagues for a decade, never got his chance. I know the minor league prospect guys over at Battery Power have been on Grant Holmes for a while. They're like, yeah, this guy can contribute. Maybe they didn't necessarily see him being a really solid
Yeah,
starting pitcher
I
for
was gonna
the
say
last.
being a starter for 2 months
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
Braves. Yeah.
But he did have some experience starting with Gwinnett. I think, he was I believe, a former first round pick. I mean, we're talking a decade ago.
Yep.
I believe that Grant originally started as a starting pitcher, as most do, and then eventually transitioned to a bullpen role. But he is going to be a really valuable kind of Swiss Army knife that the Braves can utilize in the final 6 weeks of the season. He could do long relief. He could do spot starts. He could just flat out start. He could be a power arm in the middle innings. I mean, this guy was really solid in the bullpen too before he started starting games. Again, I guess this is the victory lap on for Grant Holmes, and he deserves it because he is going to be a real key piece of this team down the stretch.
That's right. One more addition is it just came through as we're recording that this is not like a surprise at all, but they're gonna give Jorge Soler an MRI on Thursday, which is just again what you would do. Like there's no reason not to get an MRI, but it's now been reported as we're talking. So passing that along to everybody to cap our conversation earlier about Jorge. All right, last thing before we get out of here, Scott. The finale of the series is on Thursday afternoon. So I'm sure some people will listen to this after that game has either started or has happened. So apologies for the end of this. If you want to sign off now, I don't blame you. But it's a pretty high profile game, not only because the Braves want to get a sweep, of course, on Thursday, but it's an awesome pitching matchup. So this series started with this awesome matchup on Monday of Snell and Sale. This time around, it is Max Fried and Logan Webb. Now, Max is, of course, a star level pitcher. Has not been his best self the last two starts since he came back, but he's still Max Fried. And then Logan Webb is really, really, really good. So this will not be an easy sweep for the Braves, you wouldn't think, on Thursday afternoon, but a game that people could actually probably watch more because it's a 3:45 start and a really fun game, it seems like.
Yeah, obviously you want the Braves to get the win, and a 4-game sweep of a quality Giants team would be awesome. I think I am most interested in seeing how Max looks. And does he look comfortable? Does he have command, which is something he didn't really have in his first two starts back from the IL? So we'll see. All eyes on Max. It is a day game, so I know for our East Coast folks, this is not another 9:45 p.m. Eastern time start.
Whew.
Although I believe there are two more on the horizon when the Braves go to Anaheim.
Now, just to be fair, Scott, they're 9:38 starts in Anaheim, not 9:45.
Oh,
So seven minutes earlier, according to the official schedule, than the last couple games. So
yeah, 7 minutes.
save those 7 minutes, everybody.
Yeah, it's a long time. But
And then by the way, the exact game on Sunday is 4:07 Eastern time. So they're really into their exact times in Angel Stadium, I guess. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. Um, but let's hope. I mean, a sweep. I mean, seriously, after the disastrous weekend against the Rockies, a sweep against the Giants would be great. Even the fact that they've taken 3 out of 4 is awesome. And Logan Webb is very, very good. Probably, I mean, Logan Webb has been like a top 5 Cy Young guy the last few years. So it's not like he's a nobody in the national landscape. But I mean, for my money, Logan Webb is the best starting pitcher in baseball who's not like a full on household name. And he's been, especially at home, he's been awesome.
Yeah.
But let's, if Max can get back to being Max and the lineup continues to hit, let's hope the Braves can wrap the series up with a sweep and then head to Anaheim to hopefully beat up on a pretty bad Angels team.
That would be the scenario that we're all looking for, to be sure. Webb did pitch against the Braves earlier this season. He beat the Braves on July 4th, actually. Wasn't dominant in that game, but was good. And uphill battle there. But yeah, Max with command. We talked about it last time you and I talked. He looks like himself stuff-wise, but we'll see if he can find the plate and find his spots. And a fun game, to be sure. I believe the plan, not to spoil it too much, is that Stephen and Sean will have a podcast at some point between now and the weekend. And then you and I are scheduled to be back on Sunday in our normal slot. Anything else to plug here at the end of the podcast, Scott? We've already gone longer than we thought we were going to go because there's just so much to talk about and obviously positive vibes, but it is 1 a.m. Eastern, so we should sign off.
I have nothing to plug other than for you to get some rest because it is very deep into the night. But thankfully, a really enjoyable couple of games here for the Braves in San Francisco. As you said, we will have plenty of shows the rest of the week on the pod, so we really do appreciate all of the support. Yeah, we'll be back soon. And man, let's hope this. I mean, we kind of said it maybe like deliriously on Sunday night after that loss, but we said, well, maybe this awful loss on Sunday will be like a turning point in a lightning rod. And it is far too early to say one way or the other. But 3 wins in a row is really an encouraging sign, and let's hope they can keep the momentum rolling.
That's right. And nothing else. They are now 2 games ahead of the Mets as we're speaking in the playoff race. And getting in the playoffs is now goal number 1. It has been all the way along, but certainly now with a more high profile than it's ever been after the way last week went. And good stuff to begin this week for the Braves. So please go ahead and subscribe to this podcast. If you are a new listener, welcome aboard. We definitely appreciate you being here. Check us out and subscribe and rate and review on Apple, on Spotify, on Overcast, on YouTube, all of those places. We are part of Foul Territory. Check out the entire network as well. And please do us a favor if you already like the show, and we definitely thank you for that. Do us a favor and share it with someone else in your life, whether it be family or friends or post on social media. We're trying to grow the show, and hopefully you can help us do that by just making it more widespread within your circles of influence. So we thank you for that. Thanks for listening. As always, everybody, enjoy the rest of your, day. If you're listening to this podcast on Thursday, we'll see you with much more later on this week, and we'll catch you all next time.